You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast, the hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. We certainly appreciate you guys coming by the show and being part of it. As always, the Chris Voss Show is a family that loves you, but doesn't judge you, at least not as harshly as that scale you step on in the morning. We all have been there, you know what I mean. Or it's the mirror, but don't get me started on that. Thanks for tuning in. As always, we have the most amazing guests. We have an amazing mind on the show. We're talking about one of my favorite topics, leadership. You may have heard of that. I like leadership. Leadership's kind of cool. Changes your paradigm in the world. And so we're talking about that, the C-suite, how to be successful in the C-suite, probably be successful in your life, because leadership and vision pans into every aspect of your life. I mean, parents are leaders. You're probably a leader. It's not about job title. You don't have to be a big CEO, Elon Musk, to be a leader. It's kind of funny how people do that. They're like, I'm not a leader, Chris. I'm just a manager. I work the front line. No, you can be a leader anywhere. You just have to take charge and lead. So there you go. We'll be talking about the amazing insights of his amazing book. But in the meantime, that's our setup for the shaming and guilting. Please refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Please, for the love of God, please do it. No, I'm just kidding. Go to, iTunes.com /Chris Voss, 5-star review. Go to goodreads.com /Chris Voss, youtube.com /Chris Voss, linkedin.com /Chris Voss. Subscribe to the big LinkedIn newsletter. And hey, we're starting to get cool over there. We're getting traction on TikTok with some of the new AI systems we use to cut up the content. Go to Chris Voss 1 on TikTok and the Chris Voss Show Podcast on TikTok. It's kind of cool what AI is doing, man. It's changing the world. He is the author of the amazing book that has been on Amazon since November 3rd, 2020. The book is entitled C-Suite and Beyond, the 4 Keys to Leadership Success. Tom Kereszti is joining us on the show. Did I get that right, Tom?
Perfect.
There you go. He is on the show with us today. He's going to be talking about his amazing book, and we're going to learn a lot about some of the stories he's collected and things that have gone into it. And I think you're going to be impressed. I'm impressed. I think you will be too. And if not, well, you can call the show and ask for your money back. Wait, this show is free. What do you want from me, people? 2 to 3 shows a day? Tom is an industry influencer who adds value to individuals and helps companies reach their highest potential through life-changing leadership principles. Tom is a highly sought-after coach, mentor, and speaker. His approach to leadership comes from a lifetime of international experience. He has built and led executive teams at Colgate-Palmolive. That reminds me, I need to order some fluoride toothpaste. Philips Electronics, Reckitt Benckiser. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right.
Benckiser.
There you go. And the Strauss Group in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, Latin America, and the United States. He's been so international, I can't pronounce half the companies he's been with, damn it. So unlike many leadership experts who have not had the privilege of being in leadership, he's lived his life as a leader and create the challenges that most people face in life. And welcome to the show, Tom. How are you?
Living the dream. Thank you so much for having me.
Living the dream there. There you go. Give us a .com. Where can people find you on the interwebs, get to know you better?
I have a curse and a blessing of a last name that you had trouble pronouncing. So if you Google Kereszti, you find my sister, myself, and my 2 daughters. So it's easy to find me. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's my biggest following. But I'm, or on Amazon, just Kereszti, KERESZTI.
ZTI. And there'll be a link on the Chris Voss Show. So, Tom, you've done lots of travels throughout your life. What motivated you on to write this book?
So I have to give my wife credit, right? We went internationally in 91 as an expat, and lived in 6 different countries and many continents. And my wife is very outspoken. She She loves sitting at dinner tables, at parties, and she'll dominate about 70% of the discussion always.
This is how she got you to write the book too, huh? She
Yeah.
cracked the whip and
So
said,
she was
write a
always,
book.
always sharing. She was always sharing these stories with everybody, dominating the discussion. And somebody said, Kath, you should write a book.
No.
And then I said, okay, well, maybe I should write the book, and looked at it and said, okay, why would somebody read all these stories, and put a framework around it. And what I quickly found was, when my life was working well and our life was working well, some things were evident. And when things weren't going so well, some things were missing. And, boiled down to those 4 keys to leadership success. And I wrote a couple of chapters, sent it off to about 10 friends, 15 friends, and they all came back and said, Tom, we love the stories. Your writing sucks, but we love the stories. So I said, okay, right. So that's not a problem.
Yeah.
And then the book was born.
There you go. Well, that's what editors for. You have the editors, fix the writing and stuff. That's what I did. So let's get into the 30,000 overview of the book. I've teased it out a little bit, but let's hear from you. A 30,000 overview of what's inside the book.
Well, look, one of the reasons we wrote the book is people hate their jobs, right? I mean, if you take some polling out there, probably about 70-80% of people hate their bosses. And it's not really they hate their jobs, they just hate their bosses. About 20% of the people actually like their bosses. I look at my own career through that 30 years or 35-year ride through corporate America. There's literally 3 guys that I highly respected and would go through a wall for. Everybody else was like, why am I working for this person? My God. So, and we spend, I think, I don't know if it's a U.S. number or national or a global number, but it's about $50 billion corporations spend on leadership training. And and we're just really bad at it, because most companies take a person who's very good at a skill set, promote them into a leadership position, and they don't really invest in them or train them how to become better leaders, and they just fail. So really, that's behind the book. It's really looking at myself and looking at other leaders to say, okay, what separates them, what makes them different, and why they're successful as leaders. And it's not so much, my career, I went from technology to finance to sales and marketing to general management, and kind of rose up through that rank and ladder. And it was never because of my skill sets. There were a lot better accountants than me, there were a lot better engineers than me, a lot better marketers than me, but few people were better leaders than me. And really kind of honing on that leadership skill set.
There you go. Now, you've worked for a lot of big corporations through the years. Tell us kind of your hero's journey, your story of your life, and what got you learning leadership and mastering a lot of these skills you put in your book.
Look, life happened. A series of doors opened, series of doors closed, and you kind of just through sometimes through prayer, sometimes through other stuff, you kind of just look at the door and say, should I go through it? Should I not go through it? There is no substitution for hard work, right? I mean, you can't be lazy and get ahead, but it's also a lot of it. You hear a lot of people become influencers on that, right? My daughter's an influencer. She's got, 20,000 followers on Instagram. I've got 15,000 on LinkedIn. So I don't know, but look, we're all influencers. Everybody's influencing.
Yeah.
People, if you're a sales guy, you're trying to influence the customer to buy your product. If you're a customer, you're trying to influence the sales guy to give you better terms. But everybody is in the influence business, right? And these 4 keys help you become better influencers. So as I went through life, as I went through the corporate, ladder and climbing the corporate food chain, it's really, the old saying is, it's who you know, not what you know, but it's really influencing, enhancing what I call your circle of influence. So more people know about you, you build your own brand. One of the lessons that I learned about halfway through my career is I'm a brand, right? I look at myself as a brand. I promote myself as a brand. I'm not just an individual. I stand for something. And that's how you grow your influence, and that's how you climb the corporate ladder. And hopefully you don't burn too many bridges and piss people off.
Yeah, there you go. Everyone's a brand nowadays. Like you mentioned, on social media, they're an influencer. You build your brand. You get as a speaker, as an author. There's always a food chain that you've got to try and get up your brand, raise, so that you can get some visualization and all that good stuff. You talk in the book about 4 keys to leadership success. Can you tease some of that out?
Yeah, it's and again, the four keys help you influence others, right? The first one is pretty simple. It's your character.
Ah,
Who are you? Who are you as an individual? If you want to be a leader, you have to have a very strong sense of who you are, and people have to see that and understand that in order for them to follow you. I mean, if you don't know who you are and people don't know who you are, they're not going to buy into you, and you're not going to be able to, become a leader. So who you are is essential, and the equivalent of that for a company is company culture. Right. We talk about, and we spend a lot of money on company cultures, and there's two types of companies. Every company has a culture. Some companies have a culture which just happens by natural growth because they don't pay attention to it, and the cultures are just born. You may have multiple cultures depending if it's a larger company with different departments, or you have companies who actually pay attention to it, and they're mindful of it. They develop it, they nurture it, and the culture grows. They act it, they live it, and those are the healthy cultures, right? But all companies have a culture. It's just I always tell people you might as well think about it and put some effort behind it to get it the way you want it, because it's going to happen anyway.
Let me ask you this.
Like the outcome.
Let me ask you this on that concept, because culture is a big thing for me. And I realized a long time ago, and I pre-read a lot of books before I started building companies. And I understood that laying down a foundation of culture in the beginning is so important. And the leader sets the tone for that. Do you find that most people that don't try and control is not the right word, but seed maybe, or build or lay a foundation to cultivate a good, healthy culture, if they don't do that, a lot of times the culture ends up a little bit toxic, or maybe not quite as good as it might be. What do you think about that?
I agree 100%. Right? If culture is not something that you put on a billboard. Culture is not something that's on your website. I say in a healthy environment, in a healthy culture, it's based on values. It's based on shared values. And the janitor of a company or an engineer in a company should be able to walk up to the CEO and say, Tom, what you did doesn't line up with our values. It's just, I don't understand. How can we have a culture and do what you just did? It makes no sense. Right? And in many companies, majority of companies, the people who are ahead of the companies are just too full of themselves. They can't take that feedback, right? And and they should be able to take that feedback because they're the head of the fish. If they're not living a culture, how could they possibly expect everybody else in the organization to live the culture? It's just a bunch of bullshit.
You make a great point. The fish rots from the head, and I've seen many a times. People. One of my pet peeves is people who run a high school popularity competition thing, and so someone sits narcissistically at the top and wants everybody to pump them up, and they run their. They don't run their system on merits. People that work the hardest, they run their system on who can kiss their ass the most and be popularity. That's one management thing I hate. And the leader really sets the tone at the top. You bring up a good point, or someone, actually, Matthew Fulton is calling on the show. Thanks, Matthew. People want to connect to the person, not the company. And you were talking earlier about how, even though you're in a company, you still have your brand inside that company. And let me flush it out and make sure I understand you correctly. So there's times I've gone to a place that I don't like. Like, I'm not a big fan of Walmart's new forced self checkouts. And I'm kind of a jerk, and I go and ask for a checker, and which in my store, they're like gone, but I demand one. And I remember being pissed off about it because I don't like it. I don't, if you want to pay me why don't you just pay me to restock your shelves too while I'm at it, other than bag my own groceries. But the guy came out, the cashier came out, and he was friendly, and he goes, how's your day going? He goes, what's your hat about? What's that about? And he was like really super nice to me. And it made my experience totally flip from a very negative one to a very positive one. And is that an example of a guy who is one of those people like Matthew's talking about, where you can connect to a person who's a great brand inside of your company and is going to help change customers' perception of you?
Well, you're only as strong as your weakest link. Right?
Ah.
So that's a great example where you actually have an interface between a customer and an employee, and it's a positive one. And if that employee hasn't bought into the culture, doesn't like their job. I mean, everybody should be passionate and love going to work every day. Right? They should love their job. If you're miserable, that comes right across your face, and it comes across on your interactions with other people, whether you're a clerk in a Walmart or a head sales guy or head purchasing guy. I mean, yeah, love what you do. If you're not loving what you do, life is too short. Go find something else to do.
There you go. And that's probably a good reason to hire people who love what they do. And there's probably a lot of experiences I could cite that, I've had trouble with. I don't like a brand, or I don't like the experience I'm having. And sometimes someone can jump in and you can tell they enjoy their job. They enjoy what they do. I've told people, even if you don't like what you do, or maybe you don't find you're in the career or job that you do your best work hard, because it's a muscle that you build. Like, I have a lot of people that I don't like working where I'm at and I want to go be an entrepreneur. I'm like, well, are you phoning it in where you work? Yeah. Well, it's a lot of work to be an entrepreneur. And when I work for other people that I didn't like, or, toxic cultures, et cetera, I did my best work. I just worked my hardest. I performed the best because in my mind, it was practice to be better at what I do. So you talk about the four keys: who you are, your vision, your strategy as a growth strategy, and the members of your team. What's the growth strategy that you want to plan for in the C-suite? How do you envision that and apply that?
Well, look, everybody wants to be better than they were the day before. If you're
Not
a
me.
company, you want to have more.
Sorry, I had to get that.
Yeah, well, at a certain age, you may say, okay, maybe I'm more.
Yeah, I'm at the fuck it age.
So. But that's the idea in life. I want to be better tomorrow. I mean, I like to have 5 books out tomorrow instead of 1. I want to be healthier tomorrow. I want to be more active tomorrow. So I want to continue to grow. So a healthy strategy, I believe, is a growth strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where people make a mistake is they skip aligning their strategy with their vision. And vision is extremely important. We kind of skipped over it. Every company, every individual should have a very simple vision statement for their life. One for my life is man of God, leader of men. So anytime I have to make any major decisions, I run it against that. So it doesn't honor God and is a leadership role. And if it doesn't, I don't do it. If it does, then I probably do it. Right. So what you want to do, and healthy vision statements are really simple. Right. You take 2 athletic companies. Nike, we unleash human potential. Puma is we're the fastest brand on earth. Very different statements, both very successful companies, right? Mm-hmm. So make sure you have a clear vision statement that people can buy into, people can understand it. I love Coca-Cola. We refresh the world. Anybody who's associated with Coca-Cola knows it's about refreshment and it's about global distribution, right? So it's easy to buy into. It's easy to understand. So once you have that vision statement, then what you do is you build a strategy to continue to support and move along that line for that vision statement. And where companies and people get in trouble is they build a strategy and they get distracted by the latest, shiny object. Oh, competition's doing this. The market, my management is doing this. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of get veered off. And one of the companies that I use as an example is Kodak. I mean, if you look at Kodak back in my Colgate days, right? Colgate and Kodak did this great joint promotion to send a picture of your biggest smile. Right? They did a global promotion where Kodak people were taking pictures of people with smiles for Colgate, right, for your teeth, and Kodak film. And Kodak was their mission statement or vision statement was to be the best imaging company in the world. Mm-hmm. And they just kind of lost of that whole area of what their vision was, and they thought they were a filmmaking manufacturing company. I mean, with today's technology, if they just stuck to their vision to be the best imaging company in the world, where they could be, and they're just a formal fraction of themselves because they got distracted by the latest shiny object doing stupid things. American Can became a insurance company or something like that, and they went out of business. I mean, stick to your vision.
There you go.
Don't change that every year.
Let me ask you this. Do I need to, as a personal brand, do I need to have a vision or byline or motto? Like maybe I should make one, Chris Voss, sexiest man in the world, and I just put that on a shirt, wear around the office, or, I'm just being funny, but should you, maybe you have as a personal brand, should you have a motto? Like, I think ours is the Chris Voss Show, the family that loves you but doesn't judge you. I don't know, maybe.
You should, right? Because like I said, anytime you come at a crossroads on doing that, you and it could be a big one. It could be like one of the things that happened to me way back when, and my wife knows this, so it's no surprise to her. But I was doing I was a CEO of a large company, and we were doing an offsite meeting in I think it was Romania somewhere. So, we had a great event, and after the event, I got invited out for some of the folks to one of the local clubs, and we're dancing and having a great time, and headed back to the hotel. And in the hotel lobby, one of the brand managers was kind of looking at me with puppy eyes, and I could have done two things there, right? I could have kind of gone with the invitation, or kind of running against my vision statement and say, okay, if I'm a leader of men and I'm a man of God, how's that honoring my family, even though I'm thousands of miles away? And if I wake up in the morning, how do I face my management team or my leadership team? Am I really a leader, taking that choice? So even little decisions like that, you run it against your vision statement, and helps you, it gives you clarity.
There you go.
And gives you a really quick answer of what you should do and what you shouldn't do.
And the book is filled with stories of leaders who've successfully led teams, inspirational quotes, lessons, and companies that got it right. You want to tease out any of the stories that you have packed in the book? Or a short synopsis? I don't want to make you read a chapter.
There's a billion stories. I'll use my wife again. One of the great stories I love in the beginning of this book is everybody sort of says, look, I'll become an influencer. I'll become a leader when I have the budgets, when I have the corner office, when I have the title. And I would encourage all your listeners to say, look, no matter where you are in your life, you can take a leadership role. And you said this yourself. And back in, most people remember where they were in 9/11. And in 9/11, we were living in London. We were just outside of the Heathrow airport. And 9/11 happens, and Kathy's watching Sky News, and she's kind of distraught because, what's happening. And she sees all these people stranded at Heathrow Airport. So she feels compelled to help. She's not in New York. We had a lot of friends in the fire department, 4 guys that we lost that we knew closely. And Kathy said, look, I got to do something. I don't know what it is. She got in a car. She went out to Terminal 4, which was the international terminal at that time, and just said, how can I help? And people were like, well, all the hotel rooms are booked, so we're sleeping on the floors. And Heathrow was one of the most expensive airports, and some people were out of money. They couldn't, afford to eat. And, you can see British Air getting on national TV and say, look, it's an act of war. We're not responsible. Everybody's on their own. So life goes on in Kathy's head. She said, look, we're expats, right? Everybody's got big houses with plenty of room, plenty of refrigerators full of food and stuff. She said, well, why don't we host these people? So she got on the phone tree with the other, spouses that are part of the national community and say, hey, can you host? Can you host? Can you host? And before you know it, we got the school bus out at the airport, and we're taking people back to the school parking lot, and folks are taking them home and hosting them. And then the next day, there was 4 international schools in London. So 4 schools are on board now. So you got 4 times as many houses. You got 4 times as many families to host. Right. So, and you can read about this. You'll Google it on the internet. You'll find it. Right. And then now imagine this: 9/11. The second day after 9/11, British Air walks up to my wife and says, "Hey, we love what you're doing." And naturally loved it because she was like a knight in shining armor. Everybody was bitching at British Air people, and she's easing all that tension. So she said, "Here's a badge for you. Whatever you need, just come and." So they gave her an honorary British Air badge, and during 9/11, during the biggest security crisis, to go, carte blanche, we'll help you with anything you want. The third day, her phone rings, and she's been in Terminal 4, so, mostly British Air. So phone rings third day, it's Virgin Atlantic. Right? Hey, Kathy, is this Kathy Ash? She goes, Well, we got a flight going to the U.S. It's got 80 seats on it. If you want to send 80 people to the airport, they got, rights back home. Right. So you can see that influence growing. And look, the moral of the story is, if it was about budgets, if it was about the corner office, I was the guy.
Yeah.
Right? I was CEO of a large company. I could have put money towards it. I could have put, but it wasn't about that. It was just finding a cause and stepping in and taking a leadership role to say, look, this is a good cause. Let's rally around it.
Mm-hmm.
And let's build a team around it. And look, after the problem was gone, the team was gone. I mean, the team was disturbed. So, that's also a lesson for companies is that when crisis happen, when things happen, it doesn't have to come from the top, right? If you have the right culture, you can have people just organize inside an organization, maybe a temporary team, a leader steps up and says, we got a problem. Let's solve this problem.
There you go.
And he could be an individual, like a guy in Walmart, you got a problem.
Yeah, he fixes it for the customer and makes them happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we see this a lot in the military too. The military, for the U.S. military, I should specify, has a really great thing where they teach everyone to lead. And so if there's any point in the chain of command where there's a failure, your commander is missing, down, killed, in action, whatever the case may be, everyone can still take the lead and operate as a unit, without having to, wait for the Pentagon to send them. Is it okay if we cross the ravine? That sort of thing. And it makes for a brilliant strategy for them. Let's tease out some of the things that you do. I'm looking at your website. You've got several services you offer. You've got workshops and leadership development, executive coaching, masterminds, keynote speaking, strategic consulting. Tell us about some of the things you do there and how you interact and help people succeed.
Well, mostly you come into the company and usually somebody has a problem, right? They invite you in because there's a problem. It may be a problem with lack of growth. It may be a problem with people not getting along. It may be a kind of coming up with a new vision to where the company should be going. So they are struggling with a question, right? And then me and my team come in. And by the way, I have two other great guys, good friends. One is a Navy SEAL, retired Navy SEAL. He's got a book coming out. So I'll give him a plug as well. His name is Kyle. He's also published by HarperCollins like I am. And
what's the name of his book? What's the name of his book?
Leadership is Overrated.
We've had him on the show. It's in the can. Yeah, I believe so. I think we've had him on the show. I believe it's
overrated.
Yeah, I think we've had him on the show and it's in the can until September 5th or August or something.
Yeah, his book is coming out in a couple of days. Yeah. So he's a good friend, and him, myself, and Chris, we're big preachers, proponents of self-led teams that are inside of organizations. And that's exactly how the SEALs work, and once you read Kyle's book, you'll understand that. And so that's a great book as well. Mm-hmm. Funny enough, I started when Kyle came out with his book, I started reading his book and I said, Kyle, we come from two different worlds, but we look at the world very same, right? The way I look at empowering people and making them successful and the way you look at it, we got there from two different places, but we got to the same place.
There you go. Yeah, we've got that in the can. We're just been holding it for the release date, but August 29th, Leadership is Overrated. And we had a great discussion. We talked about some of the military stuff that you and I talked about. There's some other cool things that you offer on your website, a virtual workshop under the product area and 16 Laws of Communication virtual mastermind. Tell us about that and how you can help people succeed with those things that you're doing.
Well, I'm also, I don't know if you've heard of John Maxwell, but John Maxwell has been around he's in his 80s now, and he has a team, and I met John back in 2005, and he's been my mentor since.
Yeah.
I joined his team back in early 2000, I think 13 or 14. So I license all his products. So I can use my own materials, or I can use John Maxwell's materials to really help address whatever that C-suite leader is really struggling with. And look, the fact is, I try to market to C-suite leaders of companies between 20 and 300 million. Why 20 to 300 million? Well, if their revenue is less than 20 million, they're probably like not really thinking about things like culture and vision and strategic growth, and because they're trying to pay their bills and everything. They're just trying to entrepreneurs trying to get started. So if under 20 million, they probably they don't think they need me. They probably do need me, but they don't think they need me. And then if it's over 300 million, they probably go to the Deloitte Touches of the world, the Boston Consultings. They no longer go to the Tom Kerestis of the world. So that's the sweet spot between 20 and 300 million. I work with C-suite leaders, senior leaders, and the first thing, like Alcoholics Anonymous, in order for you to get help, you got to recognize you got a problem.
There you go.
So sometimes it's a tough call because maybe somebody in your organization, wants to get and recruit my help. So we have to softly approach that leader to say, look, there is a problem, and you could use some help.
There you go. And you always need to improve. You always need help. There's always, I learned a long time ago with my companies, I used to innovate a lot and do all the stuff. And then I kind of, it got harder as the companies got bigger. And I learned that I'm not the arbitrator of the corner of all the great ideas in the world. I learned that very quickly. And sometimes my employees or sometimes customers or, there's all sorts of different ideas and concepts and people that, of course, have learned to do it better when you approach some of these things. And as an entrepreneur, you're coming up and you're, a lot of stuff you learn on the fly. And so having a second mind or having a mindset where you're like, hey, let's constantly be improving, as we've talked about on the show, is really important, because if you're not constantly challenging yourself and improving yourself, well, you can get stuck in a lot of feedback loops where you BS yourself and you're just, listen to your stuff. Tell us about the mastermind group.
Well, there's two different ways to solve a problem. One is called a workshop, one is called a mastermind. And the definition between the two for me is a mastermind is getting a bunch of people together around a table. You're not really looking for a specific outcome. You basically say, look, here's an issue, maybe a global issue, maybe a company issue. It's a topic. You have a facilitator, and people around the round table talk about it and contribute, share their stories, and learn from each other. But there's really no desired specific outcome. With a workshop, there's a desired specific outcome to say, look, we got a problem we got to solve. So let's put a workshop around it, and it may be, like I said, the team's not functioning well. Maybe it's a toxic culture. Maybe the company doesn't have vision. So it could be a myriad of things. And then you build a workshop around that to try to solve that specific problem with a desired outcome. So that's how I separate masterminds from workshops.
There you go. What do you find most people are struggling with nowadays? Is it lack of good quality leadership? Is it lack of a good culture? What do you think is the number one problem, would you say?
I think the number one problem is not good leadership. And the reason there's two reasons why there's not good leadership. One is a lot of companies, like I mentioned to you, promote people who are very good at something. So one of the companies you mentioned was Reckitt Benckiser. Well, Reckitt Benckiser, they had a habit of promoting very good marketeers because they were a very good consumer goods company, very highly market oriented, and they would appoint general managers who are very good marketeers. Now, they also appointed me as a general manager, and I knew marketing, but I was not one of the best marketing guys on the block. But I took a company that was about 40 million and made it about 68 million, and they were losing about 2 million. And then by the time I left 2.5 years later, they were making 4 million. But my approach to it was really empowering the people and enabling the people to become successful and for the company to be successful. I didn't come down and say, okay, this is the marketing things we should do, which is some of my colleagues did. And they kind of looked at that company and said, well, we really don't understand what's going on, but we sure like the results.
There you go.
Right. And one of the nicest things that I heard is when I was moving on 2.5 years later to something bigger and better, they had a going away party for me. And my CFO said, Tom, we just want to thank you for believing in us and making us believe in ourselves. And that was the nicest compliment I could ever ask for. Right?
There you go.
And that's what it boils down to. You create a healthy environment as a servant leader for people to be successful. It's not about leadership, about me calling the shots and is the highway the highway or my way. And unfortunately, a lot of leaders are so absorbed in themselves, and rightly so, because they went through the corporate ladder, they got many promotions, they were successful, so they really think it's all about them. And the second that you recognize that it's not about you, but it's about something much bigger than you, that's the first step for becoming a better leader.
There you go. Always improving. And then I guess we'll get a last plug in here. You have you're going to be a Live to Lead, half-day leadership development experience. You want to get a plug in for that?
Yeah, Live to Lead. It's if you're in San Diego, stop by. We have limited seating. You could also watch it online. So if you just go to my website, pull down the Live to Lead tab. It's again, it's associated with the John Maxwell organization. This is something to do every year. They have 4 great keynotes this year. Every year they have some great keynotes. Yeah. And you'll learn how to become a better leader. So whether you watch it online or you come join us in person in San Diego, we'd love to have you.
There you go. Should be fun. Well, people are going to learn a lot from your book and your experience and everything you've done in life. Give us your .com one more time so people can find you on the interwebs, please.
You get to the same place, either my last name, which is Kereszti, KERESZTI.com. And you can just find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Amazon. And it'll get you to leadershipdisciples.com, which is the host site.
There you go. Tom, it's been wonderful, insightful to have you on the show, inspiring, and hopefully we can get some people to reach out and contact you and get to know you better. What's the best way to do that so people can get involved in what you do?
I would say the easiest is LinkedIn.
Just approach you there, send you a message, and interact with you. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
LinkedIn is such a wonderful place. Tom, thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
There you go. And thanks to my audience for tuning in. We appreciate you as well. We appreciate all of you. Well, except for that one guy in the back. I don't know, the guy with the blue shirt there in the back. Oh, wait, I'm wearing a blue shirt. Anyway, I don't know what any of that means, but it sounded funny at the time in my head. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, youtube.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, and Chris Voss 1 on TikTok. We finally found an AI to cut up our content, put in really cool little pieces with all the stuff. So go over there and support the show. We certainly appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time. There you go. Off we go, Tom. Great show, man.